You ever think about how, like, one joke from a comedian can blow up so big it gets governments and international organizations involved?
Well, that's a big ripple effect.
Right. Well, that's what happened with Ranveer Alabadia, the Indian YouTuber and podcaster everyone calls Beer Biceps.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of
He
them.
made a comment on India's Got Talent that started a huge controversy, like legal action, passionate debates, you name it. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, the whole situation. We're going to unpack the joke itself, look at the reactions, understand the cultural context, and what it means for online content these days. Because, everybody's got an opinion and a platform to share it.
It's true, the internet's changed the game. And speaking of changing the game, what's really crazy about this whole thing is how fast it blew up. I mean, it went from a joke to a potential legal battle like that.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing. So, to get everyone up to speed, let's rewind back to the incident itself. Alabadia was a guest on India's Got Talent, and he made a comment, let's just say, about parents and relationships. We won't get into the specifics here, but it did not land well.
It's safe to say it backfired. Big time.
Yeah. And the backlash was immediate. We're talking police complaints filed, calls for his arrest. Even the National Human Rights Commission stepped in. They actually requested YouTube to take down the video of the show.
Wow, that's
It
serious.
really is. It's like someone pressed fast forward on the outrage button.
Absolutely. And, it really shows just how powerful online platforms are. Things can go viral so quickly, and sometimes that line between humor and causing offense, well, it gets blurry.
I feel like the internet acts like a megaphone, taking something that maybe wouldn't have been a huge deal before and making it explode.
That's a great way to put it. A joke among friends is one thing, but broadcast to millions, different story.
Totally. And then, to add fuel to the fire, Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis even made a statement. He emphasized how freedom of speech has limits.
Right, which is a key point here. Freedom of expression is super important, but it's not a free-for-all. Most societies agree there are limits, especially when speech might cause violence or harm.
This wasn't just a political thing either. The media was all over it. Like, even that big-time journalist Arnab Goswami dedicated an entire program to what happened. He was criticizing what he sees as this trend of using vulgarity and shock value just to get attention.
Yeah, I can see his point. It raises a question we're facing as a society now. Is content creation, especially online, becoming a race to the bottom? Are clicks and views more important than basic decency?
It's a tough question. And in the middle of all this chaos, Alabadia did actually apologize. He admitted that, well, comedy isn't exactly his forte, and he even asked for them to remove the comment from the show.
It's interesting how he approached that apology. Like he focused on his intentions and that he made a mistake. He didn't try to defend the joke itself.
It was almost like he was saying, look, I messed up, I didn't mean any harm, it wasn't funny, and I'm sorry.
Right. And that brings up accountability, doesn't it? Is acknowledging a mistake and apologizing enough when something like this happens? Does intent even matter when the impact is so huge?
That's a big debate these days, and of course we can't forget about public opinion. Social media was on fire with criticism, and everyone had something to say.
And it's important to point out, the reactions were pretty diverse. Some people wanted Alabadia canceled, like full-on consequences. Others were more like, okay, bad joke, but let's not overreact.
Yeah, like that journalist Nilesh Misra pointed out the lack of responsibility, especially because the show has such a huge audience. He basically said that public figures, especially with big platforms, got to be way more careful with their words because of the impact they have.
And that point about India's Got Talent being so popular, that's really important. This isn't some tiny show, right? It's mainstream. Tons of viewers, including young people. That much influence comes with responsibility.
For sure. And then you have MP Priyanka Chaturvedi, who was super straightforward. She basically said there has to be a line. You can't just do anything in the name of comedy.
Her point is totally valid. It makes you think about what kind of humor is okay, especially with young people watching. Are we normalizing stuff that shouldn't be normalized?
Right. And one user, Zainab, even went so far as to say this whole thing shows a moral decline in society. She also pointed out the irony of Alabadia receiving that National Creator Award from Prime Minister Modi.
Whoa, that adds a whole other layer, doesn't it? On the one hand, this guy is getting praised for his creativity, but then boom, he makes this joke that a lot of people found offensive.
It really shows how public perception can change so fast online. Reputations can be built up and torn down in the blink of an eye.
It's like a constant tightrope walk. And then on top of all this wasn't even the first time India's Got Talent has been in hot water. There have been other incidents, like that comedian Jesse Kneebone's comment about people in Arunachal Pradesh eating dog meat, and even jokes about Deepika Padukone's pregnancy and struggles with depression.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard about those.
It makes you wonder, right? Is this just a bunch of random incidents? Or is there something about the show itself, the format, the culture, that encourages pushing boundaries even if it risks offending people?
That's a really good question. And to really understand what's going on here, we need to understand Aylabadia himself, his background.
Context is key.
Mhm.
It helps us see the bigger picture and understand why people reacted the way they did.
Yeah, exactly. So Aylabadia has this whole career that started with his YouTube channel, Beer Biceps. He's interviewed tons of important people, built this massive following, and, like we mentioned, even got that National Creator Award from Prime Minister Modi.
That's incredible. It shows how powerful online platforms can be. In this day and age, you can totally build a career and gain influence through digital channels, and it doesn't even matter if you have connections in traditional media.
It's like the internet has leveled the playing field in a way. Anyone with a good idea and a strong work ethic can potentially reach millions of people.
Absolutely. But it's not just about online success, right? Alabadia has also been open about his personal struggles, like with his mental health and body image, and his journey to better himself.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It makes you realize he's not just this successful YouTuber, he's also someone who's shared his vulnerabilities and connected with people on a much deeper level.
Exactly. It adds so much complexity to the situation. He's not just a villain in this story. He's a real person with his own experiences and struggles.
And then we have to bring in Samir Raina, the host of India's Got Talent. He plays a huge part in all this too.
Yeah, understanding his background and the show's popularity adds another layer to the story, doesn't it? It's like this collision of traditional media and online platforms. And it makes you think about who really controls what we see as entertainment.
He's a pretty successful YouTuber himself, from Jammu and Kashmir originally. And India's Got Talent is a big hit, showcasing all sorts of amazing talent from across India.
That's so cool. It's like a microcosm of India's diverse talents.
Hmm.
And the fact that Raina's from Jammu and Kashmir adds this interesting regional element too. That region has such a unique cultural and political landscape.
It's like everyone involved in this whole thing brings their own story to the table, which makes it so much more interesting than just a comedian telling a bad joke.
You got it. It's this whole mix of personalities, platforms, cultural differences, and social dynamics, and it's all playing out on this global stage, the internet.
It really is like everyone is a piece of this bigger puzzle. And when you put it all together, it's fascinating. It's messy, for sure, but
Yeah.
fascinating. Like this whole picture of comedy and culture and how online platforms fit into it all.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that the internet isn't just some, like, abstract thing. It's a reflection of society, all the good and bad that comes with it.
Yeah.
And something that maybe would stayed a local controversy before, now it can blow up and become this global debate.
Right, with everyone and their grandma chiming in. It's like the internet has turned into this giant echo chamber. Voices get amplified, distorted, sometimes even used as weapons.
That's a good point. And that echo chamber thing, it's like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can be great for people whose voices aren't usually heard, give them a platform. But then it can also create these bubbles where people only see what confirms their own biases, and that leads to people being more divided, even extreme.
And with Alabadia, it's pretty clear the internet made both the controversy and the backlash way bigger.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it makes you think about the responsibility of these platforms, like YouTube. They're basically controlling what we see online, so they have a huge influence on how we consume information.
It's almost like they're the new media bosses, but instead of TV networks, they're running these algorithms that decide what millions, maybe even billions of people see.
That's a great observation. It shows how much power has shifted because of the internet. We used to have just a few big media companies controlling things. Now it's tech companies like Google and Facebook that have so much influence.
Makes you wonder about those algorithms. Are they designed to show us good stuff? Or is it all about keeping people engaged, even if that means showing us sensational stuff and drama?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's a hard one to answer. Those algorithms are so complicated that even the people who make them don't always fully understand how they work. And a lot of people are worried they might be contributing to misinformation and, people being more divided and even harmful content getting spread around.
It's like we're playing a game with no rule book and the stakes are super high.
That's a great analogy. We're all trying to figure out this whole technology thing, the social and ethical parts, but it's changing so fast it's hard to keep up.
And right in the middle of all this is Alabadia, caught in this crazy web of digital stuff.
It's like a case study in what it means to be famous and influential online. It can be amazing reaching so many people, but it comes with a price. You're constantly being watched, and one mistake can have huge consequences.
It's got to feel like living in a fishbowl, right? Every word you say, every move you make, it's all amplified and analyzed.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's taken out of context too. It creates this atmosphere where people are afraid to be themselves because they might get attacked or misinterpret.
So where does this all leave us? What does it mean for like making content online in the future? Are we going to end up in a world where everyone's too scared to say anything for fear of being canceled?
It's a real possibility, and it's tricky. We want to protect free speech and have diverse voices out there.
Hmm.
But we also got to remember that words have power. They can hurt just as much as they can heal.
We need to find that balance, right? Like how to create a more responsible online world where people feel safe to express themselves, but also think about how their words might affect others.
I agree completely, and I
Mhm.
think it starts with education. We need to teach people, young people especially, about online responsibility, about the power their words have.
And it's not just about what not to say, but how to have real conversations, disagree without being a jerk, and how to be smart about the information they see online.
Absolutely. It's about moving past this constant outrage and finding a way to talk to each other with more understanding.
It's a big goal, but so important. The internet could be this amazing tool to connect with people, to understand each other better, to make real positive change. But we got to use it the right way. So we've covered a lot of ground here, the incident, people's reactions, the cultural stuff, and the bigger picture. And it seems like there isn't one easy answer, right?
No, definitely not. I think one of the biggest takeaways here is that we're all still figuring this stuff out. The internet is still relatively new, and the rules are constantly changing.
It's like we're building the plane as we're flying it, like you said earlier.
Exactly. It's exciting and a little scary at the same time, right? We can be creative and try new things, but we also have to be really careful about what we do.
This whole thing with Alabadia is like a mini version of all the challenges we're facing online these days. It makes us ask some tough questions about, like, freedom of speech, the power of technology, and how humor is changing.
And it reminds us that what happens online doesn't just stay online. It affects the real world too. And sometimes those effects are unpredictable.
Before we wrap up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this? What do you hope they remember?
This deep dive really shows how powerful online platforms are. But that power comes with responsibility too. So I hope people start thinking about how they can make the internet a more responsible and respectful place. A place where everyone feels safe to speak their mind, but also thinks about how their words might affect others.
So this whole thing started with one joke, but it's opened up this whole conversation about online culture and freedom of expression and what's funny and what's not. It's like a reminder that even though the internet is great for giving everyone a voice, we got to be careful about how we use it.
And even though this all happened in India, it speaks to what's happening everywhere, right? It makes us think about how to balance humor and cultural differences in this world where we're all so connected.
It's been a really interesting deep dive. Thanks for sharing your insights with us.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah.
And this conversation is far from over. We all need to be part of it.